What's going on, YouTube? So while the M brand used to be reserved for only a select few vehicles, it has gradually evolved to be more and more inclusive. And this X3M is the latest addition. It is promising big performance from one of BMW's smallest crossovers, which is why we just had to check it out in person at BMW of Cincinnati North. Of course, we do want to extend a special thanks to them for giving us access to this awesome vehicle. And if you're in the market for any new BMW, make sure you stop by their dealership or visit them via their website, which we provided a link to in the video description. So with all that said, let's check out the fire-breathing X3. So getting started here at the exterior styling, BMW makes it pretty apparent right from the start that this is the high-performance X3. They have ramped up the aggression by blacking out the kidney grille and totally restructuring the lower fascia to let more air in for both practical and styling reasons. Obviously, you do have M branding as well, but as far as the headlights, they're not really any different from the regular X3. They are still fully LED with the signature daytime running lights and adaptive abilities. As far as the side and back, they also have plenty of M touches, like the blacked out window trim, and best of all, the quad exhaust outlets to pump out that excellent sound. And as far as other details, you have full LED taillights, larger M branding, and blacked out roof rails. So overall, adding M to the X3 took it from being a pretty conservative and classy crossover to one that looks quite sinister in all black. But Mason and I agree that what really sets off this design are these awesome looking wheels. They are large 21-inch bespoke bi-color wheels that come standard on competition and optional on the normal model. But even in your standard configuration, you still have very nice looking 20-inch contrast alloys. Obviously, the tires are wrapped in low-profile performance tread, and the brakes are large 4-piston ventilated disc measuring in at 15.6 inches. Now beyond the performance features, the X3 does have the signature M mirrors, which are also heated, power folding, and have blind spot monitoring built into them. And then in addition to that, the M does include most of BMW's active safety features, but you do have the additional option of adding extended collision mitigation and adaptive cruise control with the driving assistant. But anyways, that's pretty much everything to discuss on the outside. So now let's go ahead and check out the upgraded cabin. So of course, as you would expect, you do have BMW's standard smart entry system, as well as their typical key fob, except with the special M branding here on the side. And this part here is made of real metal. Now if you want to remote start, you can do that via their respective application on your phone. Of course, to get inside the vehicle itself, all you gotta do is just grab the handle and it will unlock. So taking a look inside the 2020 X3M, as you can see, it does share a lot of similarities with the standard X3, but with a lot of special touches that really differentiate this as the performance X3. So going into your material and color combinations, you've got a lot to choose from, as with every BMW. So standard on the base model is Vernasca leather in black or oyster colors. However, most models, including this one, opt for the optional merino leather, and that's got a lot more options. We have the standard black version here, but you also have ivory, tartufo, Adelaide gray, black and beige combined, as well as Sahir orange, which is definitely very unique and stands out a lot. As far as your trims, you've also got a wide range of them. Fine line cove wood, gray poplar, carbon fiber, which is what we have, or aluminum carbon structure. Now moving over here to your door trim, it is very nicely finished. When you go for that merino leather, you have the extended leather throughout the cabin. So we have leather that goes all through the armrest as well as above it, and a soft touch plastic with a stitching detail across it. Like I mentioned, we do have genuine carbon fiber trim, and the door handle is made of aluminum. You have 2-person memory seating right here, and all 4 of your windows are one-touch automatic, as you would expect. Turning to the seats here, they are 14-way power adjusting with 4-way power lumbar support, as well as adjusting bolsters. I believe that's exclusive to these seats. Now these seats here are the competition seats, obviously, since this is the competition model, so they're definitely more aggressive. They look really, really cool. You got your M branding, lots of, like I said, big bolsters, lots of details. So really, really nice looking, and they feel very nice as well. And you have manual thigh extension. So like I already said, there are a lot of details in here that make known that it is the performance version of the X3. And we do have very, very nice materials to back that up. So across the upper dash, we have a really soft touch plastic with a genuine stitching detail that runs across it. Of course, moving to the middle, we have more of this real carbon fiber trim, as well as real aluminum. And then even along these lower portions here, we have a really nicely padded leatherette with more of that stitching detail. Feels very nice and looks very good. Of course, materials and everything does fit together super nicely. Now to start the vehicle, we do have a special red button. And we do also have a standard 10.25-inch display that will fire up. Of course, as you'd expect from any M vehicle, you do have a great sound at startup. But anyways, moving on to our gauges here. This is BMW's 12.3-inch live cockpit professional, as we've seen in a lot of other BMW models. This is the M version, of course, so you do have a little bit different graphics and whatnot. You can still customize it, of course, so you can do that over here in the settings. So you can click through a few different things. You can watch various different things change, and if you go to this individual mode, this allows you to basically customize exactly what you want to see. Now to go along with it, it's a little bit hard to see because it's not adjusted to my height here, but we do have a large head-up display with plenty of information on it. This is part of the executive package, which is optional on all of the X3Ms. Now coming back to your steering wheel, you do have electric power assisted steering, as well as the lovely 3-spoke M steering wheel with leather wrapping, of course, on the airbag cover as well as the sides. And you'll notice a really nice looking 2-colored stitching detail, very, very nice. As far as your buttons and everything, you do have your adaptive cruise control buttons here, as well as your typical phone and voice controls. We also have heating here in the center. That's part of the executive package. And then up top, we have rain sensing wipers, which are standard equipment. Obviously, as you'd expect for an M model, you do have standard paddle shifters. And you also notice these little red buttons labeled M1 and M2. Now what these are basically shortcut buttons for your custom drive modes. Since just about everything in this vehicle is customizable when it comes to the drive, when you actually make a setting that you like, you're just going to save it onto one of these 2 buttons. That way, while you're driving, you can quickly switch into a certain drive mode just to make things more convenient. And then as far as the steering wheel itself, it is manually tilt and telescoping. Now moving on to interior storage, that's probably the main reason why you'd buy an X3M versus a more traditional sporty M sedan or coupe. And this car does have the same amount of storage as the regular X3. So opening up the center console here, as you can see, this is very nice and deep. You do have a nice little pad down here, which is removable. And inside you've got a USB port as well. The rest of your storage is located underneath this tray, so you just slide that forward here, and you'll notice your cup holders, a 12-volt outlet, another USB port, as well as a nice little area to stick your phone, which doubles as a wireless phone charger if you option that on via the executive package. As you can see, you also have special M branding up here. Now that brings us back here to our shifter. Now this is actually a little bit different than what you find in the typical BMW. It has a different arrangement being an M model. So what you have to do is put your foot on the brake. Right now you're in the middle position as it's highlighted here. And you're going to go over to the left for drive mode. So that's drive. You can bump forward and back then to shift manually. Or of course you can use the paddle shifters as I already showed you. Now for reverse or neutral, you actually need to go over to the left side here. And for reverse, you go left and up. You'll actually notice that even though this is electronic, it does actually stay in the position relative to help you see things a little bit clearer and make a little bit more sense. Alright, now that we're in reverse, we'll head up here to our backup camera. This is the standard 360-degree camera system. You have no regular backup camera on this model, so it's a nice touch. Of course, you've got lots of different angles you can choose from. You have active trajectories, which is your 360 view. If we use our little controller here, we can switch to some different types of zones, and you can even pull up this special 3D view, of course, which is really very nice. Only a couple automakers have anything that's at this level of detail. And then to put this vehicle into park, all you have to do is press this little P right there. Now all around the shifter, you're probably noticing this wide variety of buttons. And these are basically your buttons to customize that driving experience, which I was just talking about. Except for these two, which are your electronic parking brake and your brake hold feature. But along the side here, what you'll notice is your 3 buttons. These are for your 3 different categories, which also appear right there. So if you press the top one, of course, you have your ability to change that right there. Do efficient, sport, and sport plus. The suspension, comfort, sport, and sport plus. And the steering, comfort, sport, and sport plus. And like I said, you can save whatever custom configurations you come up with inside of these M buttons. We also have the active exhaust right there, as well as our parking sensors, and a way to manually launch our 360 camera system. Now that brings us up here to our climate control system. This is our standard 3-zone automatic setup. As you can see, all the buttons are very simply laid out physically, so no confusion or anything like that. You just use these knobs to adjust the temperature, of course, and you can adjust the zones right there, and any other settings are available right there with the menu button. As far as the heating, the front heating is part of the executive package, but seat ventilation is a $350 individual option across all the models. Alright, so that brings us up here to our audio system. Now I couldn't find the exact specifications of this system. However, it is a upgraded Harman Kardon audio system. And we do have gesture control as well with this model with the executive package. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that, and we'll check out this sound system. Yeah, sound quality of this system is excellent. And I also wanted to commend them for the gesture control. I know in some of the models it's better than others, but this is definitely one of the best models I've ever experienced. And now that brings us up here to our iDrive system, so we'll go ahead and take a quick look. Now today we're on a bit of a time crunch, so I'm just going to stick with the basics here, but we do have a dedicated tech help video available for those of you who want to learn more about the system. A link to that video will be provided in the video description. Now, as far as what we need to point out here, of course, this is a touch screen as well as using the main controller down here, so you have both options, which is very nice to have. On your home screen here, you have different tabs, which represent your different sections. On the X3M, you do have standard navigation. It is very detailed and very responsive. You will also find that you have standard Apple CarPlay. That's free for 1 year, but will require a subscription after that point. And BMW still does not offer Android Auto on any of their models. And moving on up here, we do have an auto dimming mirror with built-in 3 HomeLink universal remotes. And we also have a very nice panoramic moonroof. This is part of the executive package, or you can add it as a standalone option. It is really large. It goes all the way back past the rear passenger's headrest. And this front portion does open up like a regular moonroof with your windscreen. But overall, I'm definitely very impressed by the X3M's cabin. I can definitely see why you would choose to have a car like this. You know, there's a lot of M purists who think this is like sacrilege to have a crossover M, but it definitely makes sense for a lot of people to have this much storage, this much practicality, this much luxury, still paired with the performance of M. Alrighty, now I'll go ahead and hand it off to Mason, who will check out all the practical rear areas. Alrighty, so heading around to the second row of the 2020 BMW X3M, you are going to find a good amount of space, very class competitive. So you're going to find 36 inches of rear legroom and 39 inches of rear headroom, which, like I mentioned, is class competitive. It's right in line with the Mercedes GLC 63. Now turning over here to the door trim, of course BMW doesn't mess around, so I do have a really nice door trim. It's leather wrapped all the way through here, and even above the on the leather handle, leather here, and even on the upper portion. Now in addition to that, you have some real carbon fiber trim, as well as this beautiful piece of aluminum. And we do also have rear window sunshades as well. Now of course your window is fully automatic, and down below that we do have a bottle holder, as well as a little storage cubby. Now turning over to the seats themselves, obviously these are not as crazy as the front seats, but they still are a very nice design. So you do have an interesting quilting right here, and it is also perforated and very comfortable. Now here in the center, as you would expect, it does come very nicely equipped. So all models will have these rear air vents, and down below that you will also have your own climate controls. It is 3-zone automatic, so all you have to do is just adjust the temperature. It's very simple. You have your own temperature adjustments as well as your zones and an automatic function. Now off to the side of that, we do also have 3-stage heated rear seats, and that is included in the executive package. And down below that we have a little storage cubby, as well as a 12-volt power outlet. Now here in the center we do also have a fold-down armrest. It has some cup holders inside. And up top we do have a massive panoramic moonroof. This is a really, really large moonroof, and as you can see, it goes even further behind the second row seat, so it really makes for an open air experience. And off here on the side, we do have an assist grip, as well as a coat hook, and some LED lights.
Now, like I mentioned, it is pretty class competitive in terms of space. So behind rear seating position, I do have plenty of it. I have probably 3 to 4 inches of rear leg room, and my feet can easily slide up underneath these seats, so I'm very comfortable overall. Now, I do also want to point out that there is a reclining function on these seats, so all you have to do is grab this little lever and you can recline it back. Now, it does also fold 40-20-40 split, so in order to do that, just grab this little handle and it does fold right down. Now, as far as the trunk itself, it is hands-free power, standard across all the models, so all you have to do is wave your foot under the bumper to open it up. And once inside of the X3M's trunk, you are going to find a good amount of space. You're going to find 29 cubic feet of space, and if you want to fold the seats, it's going to be 63 cubic feet. Now, like I mentioned, that is a very good amount of space. It's larger than the GLC 63. And obviously it's not any reduction over the regular X3, so you're still getting all of the capability, besides for this car being a performance vehicle. Now, as far as how it's finished back here, it is finished very, very nicely. So we do have a very nice carpeting on the floor, and underneath of the floor we have a spare tire. Off to the side we have a little storage cubby. And you can also fold the seats by grabbing these little levers on the side. We'll go ahead and demo this side. And as you can see, when you do fold the seats, it is completely flat. Now, in addition to that, we do have a cargo cover. Now, the passenger seat itself is the same adjustment as the driver, so it's probably 16 or 20 way, I'm not really sure. We do also have the massaging function on this model. Now, in front of the passenger, of course, we do have awesome materials, and down below we have a dampened glove box. It is also very nicely felt lined and LED illuminated. Up top, we have a sun visor with a mirror and light, and it does also detach, however it does not extend. Well, guys, that pretty much sums up all of the practical stuff about the X3M. So now let's go ahead and get on the road and see the real reason why you go for the M as opposed to the regular X3.
Alright, so now that brings us to the part that really matters, the real reason you get an M, and that's what's under the hood, and that's the performance of this machine. Now, this model does come with a twin turbocharged inline 6, not a V8 like some of the competition has, but it produces V8-like power. So you're going to be looking at 473 horsepower, wow. 442 pound-feet of torque. That's your standard configuration. We've got the competition model, so that amps it up another notch. 503 horsepower, the same amount of torque, but 503 horsepower.
That's just insane.
That is pretty insane for a small crossover like this. And like I was saying, that is more power than the V8 powered GLC 63, which is its closest competitor. Now, as far as the transmission, you got an 8-speed automatic transmission, and all the models come standard with all-wheel drive. Now, it is worth noting that this all-wheel drive system is rear biased completely, so it actually sends all the power to the back until it's needed and then sends it to the front. All that combined, you're looking at a 0 to 60 of 4.1 seconds. With the regular model competition, drops it by another 0.1 to 4 even. And your top speed is 155, or with the M driver's package, 173. And then finally, for your fuel economy, you don't expect it to be great with a performance vehicle. And really, it's actually all right. 14 city, 19 highway, 16 combined. You know, if fuel economy matters, BMW will gladly sell you a lower powered version of
Yeah.
this, but this is for maximum performance, and that's what this delivers. So with that said, let's take it out on the road and see how it goes. Wow. Yeah, just easing onto the throttle there. I mean, just a little bit. You can feel it, that's for sure. 500 horsepower. You're gonna know it, that's for sure. That is for sure. Power on tap here is crazy.
And it's just available just instantly.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I'm barely even touching into it, you know. We're in no place to fully unleash, of course, because this, you're going to be at 60 in, you know, just 4 seconds. So you're going to have to exercise some restraint if you have this vehicle and you're in a suburban area.
You know, now that we've kind of hit a really rough spot of road, I do want to talk quickly about, you know, how this car rides. You know, this is the X3M competition, so this is the sportiest X3 that money can buy, but I do think it still rides really good. I'm very impressed so far. You know, like I said, this is an extremely rough road, and I can't really feel any of the bumps transferring into the cabin. I can kind of hear them, but I can't really feel them.
Yeah, the shock factor is definitely reduced.
Yeah,
for sure. Some of the sporty M vehicles, you would feel it really transfer straight into your body. It's definitely dulled down here. You know, I mean, is it rougher than a regular X3? Of course. So this is not like a limo. There's other models available to you if you're really looking for extreme comfort, but you know, not too bad.
sounds fantastic.
It does have a great sound to it. And on that note, we can mess around a little bit with our active exhaust as well as some drive modes. So I turn on the active exhaust. It doesn't make a great deal of difference at low speeds. It does start up a little bit more dramatically with the active exhaust on, I found. But now that I'm on the road here, I can really obviously tell a distinct difference.
Yeah.
Alright, so I dug around a little bit in our drive modes. We were actually in comfort mode.
That was comfort. Wow.
So it only gets more extreme from here. But like we were saying with the ride and stuff, that is a testament. You do have, of course, M adaptive dampers, adaptive steering, There's everything, like a lot of stuff is adaptive, of course. So you can really tailor that to have, or, really reasonably comfortable and, family oriented. I don't think that would jostle your family too much or anything. But anyways, now I took all three of the modes of throttle response, the suspension and steering, bumped them into Sport. There is also Sport Plus, which we can check out a little later as well.
Wow, it's a lot louder.
Yes, really ramps it up. Hopefully the microphone can pick up on it, but it is a really deep,
throaty sound.
Throaty sound, yeah, exactly. I can definitely tell that the ride has changed.
Yeah.
We really buttoned down here. I can feel a lot more of these impacts into the cabin as well as the steering. But that does also mean that the steering is really even livened up another notch. It's super communicative.
And in the sport mode, we're going 38 miles an hour, but we're just still sitting just at 3,000 RPM to give you some of that noise. And then when you slow down a little bit, it does kind of rev match. It gives you a little burble, and it just sounds really good.
Like, you almost have to shake yourself, like, this is a crossover. This starts as life as a humble suburban X3,
All about luxury.
All about luxury, all about comfort and being with the family. And then we come to this, a genuine performance machine. Of course, you have full manual control, as you would expect, so you can rev it out to your heart's desire.
It really is just remarkable that a crossover can be like this.
Yeah, this is really just a testament to how much fun this car is that you can have fun when you're going 40. I mean, I do apologize. We're totally unfamiliar with this area. This is not where we live. And right around this area seems to be surrounded by places with unusually low speed limits.
And police officers.
Yeah, there's a lot of police. The speed limits are really low, and the roads are really beat up. And it's very straight as well. I really would like to take this out. This is a car you want to canyon carve with, but there doesn't appear to be any canyons we're going to be carving around here. But like I said, just goes to show you. This is the type of car that's kind of what it's designed for. Of course, it's designed for you to open it up and really play with it out on a curvy road. But it is also designed for the person who still needs the utility and all that stuff. and still needs a vehicle that can haul around people, and it is going to be a family vehicle ultimately at some, you know, some instances when you're using it. But yeah, this steering so fast, it takes just a small degree off of center, and you get an instant response. That's exceptionally good. Also, you know, not small things, it's actually quite important, but not everyone gets it right. BMW does steering wheels right. I mean, this is a wonderful steering wheel. Thick rim, great shape, great feel in the hand. It's a pleasure to drive with this.
Well, and when you go around a corner in the X3M, it's just like, it feels so planted. You know, with a crossover, it's just, you know, you don't really expect it to be that planted. But they really have done a great job on making this car almost as planted as a sedan, really, because you don't notice that you're in a crossover.
Yeah, really, that's pretty much like the biggest thing about this car. You know, when BMW first started making M crossovers, people were like, oh my gosh, you know. I think it's less shocking now because people have seen how good the X5M and the X6M are. You know, and that same concept comes down here to this X3 as well as the X4. And that is, like Mason said, that's applying the same characteristics, the same principles of the M sedans and coupes to this crossover in such a way that you're almost like, you just forget you're in a crossover. You know, you're just kind of like, wow. And I really do think anybody that drives this will really step away impressed, because this is a really unique combination of extreme performance with the ability to be practical as well.
Alrighty, and now let's go ahead and discuss the pricing for this awesome performance crossover. Now, as you would expect, all of this luxury and performance doesn't come cheap. So for the base X3M, that's going to start at $69,900. Now, if you want to go for what we have here, which is the X3M Competition, that's going to be a $7,000 price premium to $76,900. And as far as how this particular X3M Competition is equipped, we do have just a few options since there aren't very many options for the Competition model. So we have the optional black sapphire paint for $550, as well as the executive package for $3,900, and the optional front ventilated seats for $350. And then when we add in the destination charge of $995, this particular model as equipped comes in at $82,695, which is definitely an expensive price point, especially for this type of vehicle, but it is definitely in line with a lot of the German rivals like the GLC, and you are getting a ton of power and performance in this car, so you really can't complain about that price tag because you are getting a lot for it. Well guys, we've enjoyed watching one of the first in-depth looks at the 2020 BMW X3M Competition. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.